Hi everyone and welcome to the Virtual View podcast with me, Paul Collis from Virtual Finance Director Services. I'm delighted today to be joined by Gareth Metcalfe from Schofield Wealth Management. Good afternoon, Gareth.
How are we doing, Paul? Good to see you as always.
Yeah, very well, thank you. And thanks for giving us your time today. As with all my guests, with all my guests, I normally just do a brief intro to yourself, Gareth. You tell us a bit about your career today, because you've had quite a varied career up to now. So talk about your early career, where you've got to at the moment, what your plans are for the future, really.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. Do you just want me to go?
Yeah, if you want to
go for it. Press play and go. Right. So my role now is business development manager at Schofield Wealth Management. If we backtrack, what we're talking now, 20 years almost. Yeah, no, it will be. I basically went to university, did sports studies simply because my mum was desperate for me to go to university. I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I knew that I liked sports. So I was like, right, let's do sports studies. I did the 3 years of sports studies at University College Worcester, hoping that in those 3 years I'd get some idea about what I wanted to do with my life. Came out of uni, still not knowing what I wanted to do. So while I work out what I want to do, I better get myself a job. So back in those days, you didn't search for a job online. You went to Asda and bought the Jobs Northwest newspaper. So that's what I did. And I found a role just working as a samples assistant at Jacobson Footwear over in Rottenstall. So I went for that, got that, which basically entailed, so it was a footwear company, importer and distributor, and they had samples of all the shoes that they were having to sell to people coming in, and they needed to be kind of sorted out, distributed, this, that and the other. So I had that role, and I worked within that department for probably about 3 years. Within that business, I was kind of thinking to myself, well, yeah, I'll just stay here until I work out what I want to do. Anyway, 13 years later, I was still there. And I'd moved myself up through doing that role to doing a period of time working as a kind of go-between between our business and Sports Direct. So I was spending 2-3 days a week down at Sports Direct's head offices down in Shirebrook in Nottinghamshire. Then I went from there to doing a little bit of selling out on the road in that area. I did well at that. So then my kind of patch, if you will, my sales patch ran from Great Yarmouth in the east over to Aberystwyth in the west, so kind of like a block across the middle of the UK. And then from there, the guy who's doing the north of England moved in-house to work on key accounts. So with obviously me being in living and commuting from Burnley, I was forever having to do at least an hour and a half just to get on my sales patch, never mind see a customer. So the kind of logical thing was to move me to the north of England and Scotland. So I did that for a period of time. Then there was the financial crash hit in amongst all that, and there was a few rounds of redundancies at the company over time, and it got to a point where I just thought to myself, it's not a sector that I was massively passionate about or anything, so why not make a change? So in one round of redundancies, I just put in for voluntary and thought, let's have a do at something else. So I spent a short period of time selling PE services into primary schools, and then I got into selling eyewear, but into key accounts, sort of multiple accounts, so like for Specsavers, Astra Opticians, Factory Shop, Dunelm, things like that. So that was a business based over in Merseyside. So this was kind of me going along from a sales and business development point of view and just developing my skills like that. In amongst that, probably, what would it be now, 6 years ago, came across Herbalife Nutrition from a network marketing perspective. Didn't find it trying to find a business, but found it just through using the product. So I'd kind of played football, etc. when I was younger, stopped doing that because of injury, piled on some weight using those products because my friend had basically recommended them to me. I started to understand more about my own health and nutrition and stuff, lost the weight, and then thought, you know what, I can help other people do the same. So I became a member and distributor of that about 6 years ago. And what that did, that kind of helped me massively on putting me on a bit of a personal development journey, which not only kind of looks at looking after your body, but also about looking after your mindset, getting your mind right. And one of those things in amongst there was getting your money right. So I'd for quite some time known or had a nag in the back of my head that I wasn't putting enough money away for my future. So I was getting my annual pension statement through from wherever I was at. And the projections for where you were going to get to were just like, you just look at it. We used to laugh in the office of like, well, we're not going to get very far on that, but you never did anything about it. Yeah. So I was sat at my son Harry's swimming lesson. Only 4 kids in a class. It was one of those kind of small classes. And so you kind of sat there with the other parents watching your kids try not to drown. And one of the other kids in the class was a son of Paul Schofield. So we're sat watching the kids swimming, get talking to each other, what is it that you do, etc. And when Paul said, oh, I'm a financial advisor, do this, that, and the other, I said, oh, you know what, I could actually do with speaking to you. I've been thinking about that. Yeah. So we had a chat, and long story short, I became a client of Paul's probably is about 5 years ago, something like that. Went about my merry way of work, had my workplace pension set up, but then I'd also now set up a private pension, and that plus that was giving me the end goal, which I wanted to get to, and the nag that I'd had in the back of my head had now gone. Fast forward 3 years from that point, 2 years ago from now, and Paul gave me a call, said business was going really well. He got a couple of advisors on board, had another one starting the following spring. He built his business up primarily through networking and referrals, but he was that busy from looking after his own clients and the referrals he was getting from his current clients that he knew to do the networking side of things right, i.e. going out, having one-to-ones with people, doing the follow-up, finding referrals for other people. He didn't necessarily have the time, so it'd be good to have somebody who was full-time doing that role. Yeah. And with me being a client and therefore an advocate of what he does, and also already having done sales and business or doing sales and business development, I'd be a good candidate to give that a go. So yeah, I've been doing that since January of last year, so coming up to almost 2 years now, and done plenty of networking. Obviously, me and you know each other from networking groups, and yeah, that's been the way that I've kind of operated from that point on.
Brilliant. No, I think that was a really, really good detailed background. Thanks for that, Gareth. One of the things I've noticed from like your presentations are, even though I've got a finance background, I don't have a lot of personal finance knowledge in terms of pensions, savings, and what things are out there for people. And I think referring back to what you were saying about your pension, when you used to look at your pension pot and joke about how small it might be, or you know how little you get from it in the end, I think, like my own view, it's a lot of, you know, your typical man or woman on the street thinks that building that pot might be out of reach a little bit. And you've given some brilliant examples in presentations I've seen about how, you know, compounding, and if you know, especially for kids of today, if you do start saving, I think one example you set was, is it when you're 18, if you save £100, I can't remember if it was a month or a week.
Be careful what you're going to say here, just in case you've got it completely wrong and we're like, you know, dragged in front of the FCA or something. No, let's from that point of view, I think you're absolutely right, and there are examples out there that people can search for online, no problem, about the power of compounded interest. And it's not as the best way to explain it is, it's not as simple as just saying, well, you know what, if you put this away every single month, so whatever, times 12 months, times 40 years, you'll end up with that. Because basically what you have is, on a year-on-year basis, you have percentage growth. And as that amount gets bigger, the percentage growth of that is a percentage of a larger amount. So it's, in the early days, your growth is kind of gradual, but then at the end, suddenly, I mean, the best example is the compounding penny. Which is a well-spoken about thing where you basically, and again, I'm not going to say the numbers because I don't know off the top of my head, but you give somebody an option of, you've got a penny which doubles in value every day for the next 30 years, or we'll give you £1 million. What do you want? What will you have? And the vast majority of people have, I'll have £1 million, of course. But actually, and you know what, the person with $1 million would be winning on that argument until probably the last 3 or 4 days of the example, and then suddenly the penny gets to a point where it doubles, and that person's got loads more. So no, it is. It's absolutely right, and you're right in that. I think the average Joe on the street does think, if you said to somebody you could do with £500,000 when you retire, they'd be like, no chance, no way I'm going to have that. But it's absolutely possible. But the number one thing is you need to start, and ideally you want to get yourself some advice on the best way to do that. Yeah,
brilliant. And what's your website, Gareth, if people want to look at Paul?
It is
website.
paulgschofield.co.uk.
Okay, and I guess there's blogs and tips and stuff.
Yeah, you be able to find Paul Schofield Wealth Management on Facebook and on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So that's the best place probably for where I've been sharing plenty of articles which are aimed at trying to put things in layman's terms, because that's ultimately what I do, and I kind of try and operate from not a place of ignorance, but I don't try and go out there within networking circles and be the man with all the answers, getting into all financial speak and getting into the technical things. I almost do the tip of the iceberg and get people thinking. And then when they want to know more, that's when we've got 4 advisors who are all, very well qualified, and they can get into the nitty gritty based on what each individual will be trying to achieve. And so I just set those appointments up.
Brilliant. Going back to your like day-to-day job, how I'd imagine you used to be out in the field a lot more than what you are at the moment due to COVID. What would a typical day be like pre-COVID for you?
Hectic is the word. A lot of driving about. A lot of driving about really. And I kind of mixed it up between having meetings with either one-to-one meetings from networking groups or meetings with prospective new clients, to networking meetings in groups, to networking events where it was just more getting together, open networking, bumping into new people, bumping into people that you'd seen before, and basically using all of those as ways to for myself to be visible, which ultimately then makes the practice and what we do visible. And I think I was doing that to a good level really, because I think we had got to a point where, if you were kind of thinking about financial advice or wealth management, we would be somebody that you think about, just because, well, not only myself being out and about, we've got a couple of advisors as well who are also in other networking groups. So, we are out there and visible within networking circles.
Okay. And then when the first lockdown hit, was it basically trying to set all your meetings up on Zoom? Did you lose touch with clients? Did you have to, how was that?
I think for us as a business, and and I've said this a few times now, and I think we should be given credit for it. We barely missed a step when the lockdown hit. So we transitioned from having face-to-face meetings to having meetings primarily on Zoom straight away. I think it helped massively in the fact that every man and his dog knew how to use Zoom, because they were doing Friday night family quizzes or whatever. So, the kind of technological barrier just fell, because everyone was forced to get used to the technology. The main problem for me, I suppose, with what I did, and touching on what I used to do from activity point of view, was some networking activities are fine on Zoom, i.e. your one-to-ones, you can still pretty much do on Zoom. But then, and even your networking meetings, 75% of it can be done absolutely fine on Zoom. Yeah. The key thing from a networking perspective, which hasn't been able to be replicated in my view online, has been the open networking, wandering over, having a chat to somebody, being in a group of people, just having a natter and a laugh. being in a room around other people where they might not even see you to speak to, but they're like, oh, there's Gareth again. You know, here he is. It'd be an opening of an envelope with that lad. That's what they used to say. Me and Paul Walsh, serial networkers. So yeah, you don't have that flexibility and no openness. So like, if you looked at your networking meetings where you have, you know, your structure of your 60 seconds and the like, one of the key parts, and I was literally saying this to somebody yesterday, we were both in agreement, one of the key parts and probably the most productive parts of those meetings is the time before the meeting starts, when everyone arrives and has a brew and has a natter, and the time when the meeting ends, when everyone finishes off the drinks or whatever, and again has a natter and maybe has a quick catch up. And similarly, there's some events which were run in person, which were brilliant just for open networking purposes.
Yeah.
So you'd almost have an event where they'd have 3 people speaking, but they'd literally have 5 minutes, and you know, no offense to those people, they probably sponsored the event, so they were allowed a little slot, but you never went to that event to listen to those 5-minute slots. You went to that event because it was just, oh, I wonder who's going to be here. Oh, there they are again. Let's go and have a chat. Oh, I've been meaning to speak to them. I'll go over and have a chat to them. So those, since going online, so you could have 40, 50, 60 to 100 people on a Zoom and you'd have your 3 5-minute slots again or whatever, but those 3 5-minute slots would suddenly be the focus of the meeting, because you couldn't go around and wander and have a chat with any one of those 100 people. You might see them on the Zoom just sat there like on the whole Muppet Show thing of everybody being sat around, but there was no having an natter to them and having a laugh. You kind of just sat there in silence and maybe bobbed them a message on the chat.
Yeah. Now, as someone who's worked in quite big offices for most of my career, you know, it's those small conversations and interactions that normally lead to a new idea or a new, better way of doing things. So, like you say,
yeah, and
you know,
and you know what? I think the whole, another one of the key thing as well, which came out more as time went on, was the whole benefits of just connectivity with other people, and obviously in personal life that can be friends and family, but you know, we spend that much of our time at work and in business that, yeah, the office environment, if you have one like that, or the networking environment. I mean, going down to the hub at Turf Moor was great, because you do your work, but you'd be bumping into people all the time. And again, great for networking, but it's only when it's taken away from you where you realise the benefits from just general human connectivity. So that's been something which I would imagine more people than would care to admit have struggled with this year. And it's been great, to be honest, to see so many people actually come out and say that has been one of the main struggles, just not being around other people.
Yeah, no, definitely. So going forward, and hopefully, you know, touch wood, the vaccinations and all the rest of it will be rolled out next year. And as we move back to more, well, I don't think things will ever be the same again in terms of working environment. How do you see yourself? Do you see a 50-50 split between working on Zoom and being out there meeting people?
Yeah, I think I got pulled up a few times by some of my networking contacts prior to this saying, you need to slow down, you're going at 1,000,000 miles per hour. And I'm like, I'm invincible, I'll do what I want, sort of thing. But they were right in a sense, in that, you know, sometimes you can be a busy fool, can't you? Yeah. And I use an example. Once kind of lockdown was sort of lifted, in those early weeks, I had a day where I had 4 meetings, and those people there was one in Burnley, one in Bolton, one in Blackburn, one in Rosendale. Prior to lockdown, I'd have driven to every single one of those meetings.
Right.
But what I did this time was I had 2 of them in person, and I did 2 of them on Zoom. So my traveling wasn't probably halved, but the amount spent traveling was reduced, and the rush to get from A to B to C to D wasn't there. So it just completely reduced the time stress that I was probably continually placing myself on. You know, I want to get as much done during the day as possible. So that means I need to travel here, travel there. And, you know, you don't realise how much time you spend
Yeah.
Not only just traveling from one place to the other, but when you travel from one place to another, you then at each side of that travel time, you have that kind of wherever you've got to get yourself there, get yourself set up, get yourself ready to do whatever you want to do. And you know, it's been a lot more efficient doing things from Zoom, sat in the same place, and just kind of, you know, you're off one and onto the other.
Yeah.
So I think I will definitely, there's definitely 100% need for face-to-face meetings. However, dependent on where your meeting is, what the content of the meeting is, how long it's going to be, who the person it is that you're having with, and the relationship you have with them. I think each time I book a meeting, a bit like I've been doing for our advisors, really, it's like, is this a face-to-face? Is this best face-to-face? Is this best on Zoom? Is this best via phone? And I think what Zoom's brought has, you've had phone calls for ages. You've had face-to-face for ages. The downsides about phone calls is that you can't see each other. What Zoom has done is basically brought phone calls and face-to-face and kind of created a little bit of a happy medium. But it still doesn't completely replicate being face-to-face.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think there's definitely an argument for a mixed working environment going forward. You know, there are certain things where you can be more productive, like you say, less traveling time. You know, you sometimes do need that quiet space to get your head down and get things done. So as we come to a close, Gareth, if people are interested in, you know, taking their, you know, personal finances a bit more seriously and planning for the future, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
They can email me at gareth.metcalfe@sjpp.co.uk, or just give me a call on 07496 833 265. And best way to describe how our process works with regards to myself is the initial chat with me is just to kind of see if there's an opportunity or a need. And through that conversation, if having that brief chat with me makes that person realise, yeah, I do need to sit down and chat about something, that's when I arrange a meeting with one of our advisors.
Okay, brilliant. So, yeah, thanks for joining us today, Gareth. So that's Gareth Metcalfe from Schofield Wealth Management. You've been listening or watching to the Virtual View podcast. Thank you.